Morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Tamara Johnson. Shealey, good morning. Good morning, good morning. It is Friday, beautiful Friday morning here in the ATL. Let me see where my trusty co-host is this morning. Let's see where this young gentleman is. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Tamara. How are
Good
you?
morning. Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Yay, yay. It is Friday, October 18th. How many weeks till
TGIF.
TGIF? How many weeks till Christmas, David? Like this year is about gone, like it's
Oh,
almost over.
yeah, yeah. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Having a whole lot of fun, David. I made an announcement this week.
Oh, tell us about it.
I did, David. I made an announcement. I am testing the waters to the United States Senate, David.
Whoa.
Whoa, right? Yes, so I have decided to see, and I'm going to do more than see, but that's where you have to start. So I am going to see where this leads us, David. There's a lot that needs to happen here in Georgia, specific to us as Georgians. A lot of things that don't happen under the Democratic umbrella. I will be running as a Democrat because I am a Democrat, but we're going to push this party. We're going to push this party in a very progressive direction. There's a lot of things that need to be addressed. So I think it's time, David.
Okay.
So those of you that know David, it's kind of hard to spark a fire under him this early in the morning.
Yeah.
What you think, David?
What do I think? I think, go for it.
Let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Let's do it. There's a lot that needs to happen here in Georgia. So we all know March 24th is the presidential primary here in Georgia. And I don't think that they're pushing that to the extent here that they need to, because our primary has now been split, where we would have our presidential primary and our state primary on the same ballot. We will now have two primaries here in Georgia. March 24th is the presidential primary. The state primary, where I will be, if there's a special election, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but the state primary will be May 19th. So now we got to get people back to the polls, not just one time, two times, but three times for November in 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it could be interpreted as voter suppression.
You think so, David?
Yeah.
Yeah. Voter suppression at its finest. Here in Georgia, they've done things from, I've heard stories about one polling location where the lights was off in Atlanta. They had to come back because they had no power. I've heard stories about there being just a handful of voting booths, just ridiculous stories, David. People that are being turned away, ID, just ridiculous stories, David.
Yeah, and then there's the simple structural issues of polling places in wealthy suburbs where you go in and it takes you 5 minutes to vote. You drive your car up to the door and you walk out, you sign up, the form, and you immediately go into a booth, where there are other places in the city, particularly, and in poor neighborhoods where you wait an hour, to vote, when people who are working people, they don't have an hour. They're on the clock. So there are structural biases that are built into the system, and so if you're waiting an hour, 2 hours to vote, when you're losing pay, that's a real structural bias in voting suppression. Even if you are committed. I mean, you think about how much commitment it takes to vote in some places versus others where you just drive up and you walk in.
And imagine people that don't live, they may work outside of where they, far from where they live, and they're trying to get back in time to vote at their polling location. So just that alone, David.
Yeah. And there are people who don't have cars, and it's and people who are renters are much less likely to have their current address on the voter rolls. So anyway, we know what's going on. We are hip to the.
And they're playing big games here in Georgia. So I'm excited about Stacey Abrams' efforts, because she is, not just shedding light on what happened here in Georgia behind her race, but she is going around nationally to make sure that these kind of things don't happen in other states as well. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Right. And we got to do it. We got to do it. So what's going on, David, on the political front? I know that we have been, so I wanted to talk about what happened in Fort Worth, this new police shooting this week. Did you hear about that? I hope I'm saying Atiana.
Tatiana.
Tatiana. Thank you. Look, you got it correct. and I couldn't get her name right, but God bless her soul, bless her family. For her to be in her own home, this thing is real for Black people. Like we feel like we are going to be exterminated by the police. Like they're trying to get rid of us, David.
Well, here's the thing. I heard an interview or saw an interview. I think it was on one of the evening MSNBC shows. No, it might have been on PBS NewsHour. I can't remember his first name. I think his last name is Claxton, and he is the president of the Black Law Enforcement Association. And I would love to hear Ken Williams' views on him. But Claxton said that we have to address not simply implicit bias in the police, but also the structural bias in the system. That includes training, and he really brought up a number of things about the way that police are trained, that it's a military training, as opposed to a de-escalation training. And so whether we need the police or not, I mean, that in itself is a real question. Whether we should just get rid of these guys altogether and use some kind of a community system, community-based system to protect communities.
And we can police ourselves in our neighborhoods, and we know our neighbors. And I understand we can, we need them to a certain degree, but what is happening in the Black community, David, it doesn't happen in my community, because I definitely live in a neighborhood where, they're not just shooting people randomly. Right. And why are police trained to shoot to kill? I mean, there's an incident here in Georgia. A gentleman, he was naked. He was obviously not well. Not well. Why did they not? You don't have to shoot to kill. Why? He was naked. He did not have a gun. So
that's exactly the kind of things that have to do with training. And I think his name is Claxton, but he pointed out, that police are trained that anybody who is a threat anybody who they perceive as a threat is, you have to take them down, and that means hitting them right in the chest with your Glock, with a bullet.
And let's talk about that word threat, David. Threat. Yeah. What's threat? My skin is brown, so that means I'm a threat.
Well, as I say, Claxton has suggested all of these things that are, first of all, just completely revamp the training. To emphasize de-escalation and diagnostics of the situation. this guy, officer who has now resigned, in Fort Worth, he, first of all, he even under his training, he was at he did the wrong thing, shooting into a house like that. But the other thing is that that even the small measures that were taken by the Obama administration, these consent decrees, that were implemented with various police departments to revamp their system under the jurisdiction or under the aegis of the Department of Justice. That's all disappeared, now with Sessions and with Barr. They've just eradicated that. So
would you give us a history lesson, David? I'm gonna take a quick pause, but I want you to give us a history lesson on policing, because you've talked about how people have deputized. You deputized the police. Can you just kind of bring us up deputizing white people? Yeah. Can you bring a little light to that? I'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a little bit of an extemporaneous, discourse here, but I think that throughout the history since the invention of the white race, back in the late 17th century, that's been the way in which European Americans have been enlisted into the perpetuation of slavery, even though they are in the same working class as the enslaved people in this country, and that continued under Jim Crow. There's no doubt about it that every white person was assigned, particularly white men, were assigned the role of enforcing the Jim Crow system of separate and unequal. So, we have a history of deputizing European American working people to go after their class brothers and sisters, and to punish them or enforce the separate and unequal system. And we have it today now when people, call the police. They call the police on Black folks, and they put them in. They put their lives in jeopardy. White people calling the police on Black folks puts Black folks' lives in jeopardy, and white folks have just got to recognize that. They've got to recognize that what they're doing is an existential threat to the people that they are targeting. So while on the one hand, this is a really dangerous situation, it is also a real opportunity to raise consciousness, at the same time, about how the system operates very differently in predominantly white versus predominantly Black communities. And
you just said that they need to recognize that. David, I think a lot of white people do recognize that this will be harmful to us, and that's why they do it. Like, I saw a video just a couple days ago that a girl, something happened with her and this white woman. The white woman was harassing her and took pictures of her. So the Black woman was angry, and the white woman immediately, she was calling the police. But the good thing is the Black woman was filming it the whole time.
Yeah. Well, I what I'm saying is that we can. I'm trying to turn this into its opposite, right? By raising consciousness of of the difference in threat that exists when the police are involved in in these kind of are called upon to intervene, given the kind of training that they have, given And I don't like to use the word unconscious bias or implicit bias. I think that's a way for a lot of people to in the anti-racism industrial complex, cottage industry, to make make a living off of this. There are ways in which we can raise these issues across community lines that would be much, much more effective than the issue of implicit bias, than raising police officers' consciousness about their own implicit biases. That in itself is just a blip compared to the whole structural training and lack of accountability, that is involved structurally in the way that the system works. So if we're going to have any buy-in by European American folks in their own neighborhoods, we have to go directly to them and have some community reconciliation that goes on, so that the European Americans really, just to give an example, a personal example, as I think I've mentioned before, about 20 years ago, when I first came to Atlanta, I lived on Martin Luther King Drive. I lived in an apartment complex on Martin Luther King Drive. And I could see fundamental differences between the way that that police operated in that neighborhood versus the one that I live in now. So, that's what we're facing. And when I talk to European Americans, to other white people about where I lived, including very progressive folks who were, Unitarians, and other liberal religionists, liberal religion denominations, they were absolutely terrified by the notion that somebody that they knew, a white person that they knew, could live over there. That's the way they described it.
They were terrified for you, David? They were scared for you?
For me, and also for themselves. I would get reactions like, "What are you doing there? You got to get out of there.
Those people are going to kill you, David." Those people are going to kill you. You better get out of there. How can you live amongst them? They're dangerous.
Exactly. And I'm not talking about racists here. I'm talking about people who consider themselves liberal, progressive, and all of that. But, what was clear about it was they had never been to that neighborhood.
They probably would have never gone to that neighborhood, David.
Yes, that's exactly my point. They had never been to that neighborhood. To them, it was as foreign as I don't know, China. They really had no idea.
Somebody wants to know, how did you survive, David? How did you survive over there, David?
Yeah, well,
thank you, Kelvin, for that question.
Well, one of the things that was very clear to me from that experience as I was living it was that there was much more community in that apartment complex. People looked out for each other. They were very respectful and careful. And because I was the janitor of the apartment complex, it didn't matter that I was this white-haired, weird white guy in my late 40s, early 50s. They saw that I performed and diligently performed a function of keeping the grounds clean and orderly, and I was more or less accepted for the.
And you were respected, David.
Yes, it had to go both ways. There had to be respect on my part for the community that I was connected with.
He said, so, Dr. Martin Luther King Drive is not the wilderness.
Yeah, it was like I was talking about the jungle, or something. I don't know what they imagined was going on. And I mean, I'm not going to say that I wasn't nervous there the first month or so that I lived in that apartment, because I was, I had not lived in a Black neighborhood, like permanently, the way that I was living there before. But as I say, I had a consciousness that enabled me to see things clearly, as opposed to through the lens of threat and attack. So.
And there is a sense of community. See, this is what white people don't know about Black people, is that we are a loving, warm, nurturing race of people. Because if we weren't, David, America would have a totally different history from what it has right now. So we're not who they say we are. So yeah. when living in that community, I'm sure that people respected you. You probably had you probably, I'm sure, made friends. So it was uncomfortable for you to be there because you knew that it was impoverished. I'm sure that, people needed, resources were not available, but that nothing happened to you, David.
Well, not only nothing happened to me, it was an enlightening experience in the sense that that I learned things about myself, that were how to discipline myself, how to maintain a certain sense of respect and order for those people around me, no matter what I was feeling at the time. It became, well, I don't know how I'm writing.
So it's like your white privilege, like you knew you didn't have any white privilege over there.
I did to some extent. It remains. I mean, it was very interesting to see how the geographic location that I was in both stripped away certain things, and, about white privilege and reinforced others. And actually, I'm writing a memoir about this. I hope I'll be able to get it finished before
before what, David?
Christmas.
Thank you. That's what I'd like to hear. Yes.
Maybe even before Thanksgiving. But it really, I've been thinking about this a very long time, and the insights that I got from about myself and about the environment around me are really, really important for other folks to Cheryl.
Black people, we are a loving race of people. Like, we're not who they have tried to make us out to be.
Well, the other thing that I think is really important, particularly for progressive whites who are listening to this broadcast, is to understand that that working class solidarity in this country is embodied and embedded in the Black community. That a lot of what you are describing as, a loving community is one in which there is the kind of mutual support that we think of as coming out of working class solidarity. An injury to one is an injury to all. That we, that the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. There is a much higher level of commitment to community because of the oppression, repression, and and impoverishment, systemic impoverishment. People have had to rely on each other and not simply on family or trappings of success that come from having access to a lot of resources. So I do see that as being a very important part of the way that the system has developed. And all of these, these white folks who call themselves socialists and don't understand that there is a whole Black socialist tradition that comes out of slavery and the need for communities to protect themselves under white supremacist terror in the Jim Crow era. They don't really get it. They're expropriating socialism, and it's white socialism. And that's a contradiction in terms, because, you can't preserve and protect or accept white privilege and a systematic inequality and think that you're acting in solidarity with the half of the working class that's people of color.
Yeah. David, we're going to take a quick pause. We have a guest in the lobby. We have a candidate who is running for office right here local to Georgia. We have a few minutes that we're going to bring her in, because we're going to bring Mr. Egberto Willies in with Politics Done Right just shortly after. So let's see if we have Miss Triana Arnold James. Miss Triana, welcome to the broadcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, how are you? Let me get this. We gotta get this thing out your face so we can see you. There you go. How are you?
Can you see me now?
We can see you now. We can see you now. Tell us. So Triana guess what? Triana ran for lieutenant governor here in Georgia in 2018. Did relatively well for a first-time candidate out the gate. Now she is running for a state senate race, and I'll let Triana explain. Hey, Triana.
Hey, how y'all doing today? Happy Friday.
Good. Happy Friday. Welcome to the broadcast.
And thank you so much. You taught me a few things about this live broadcast thing, so I feel like I'm empowered now. So, but yes, I'm Triana Arnold James. Am I okay?
Yeah, we could. Yep, you're okay.
Triana Arnold James. Yes, I'm running for State Senate District 30, and that covers Carroll, Douglas, and Paulding counties. West Georgia.
So that's is West Georgia.
West Georgia.
Awesome. And tell us now. You ran for the lieutenant governor. Talk about that a little bit. That was a big race for you, and now you are bringing it a little more local to where you live. So tell us about that whole experience, Triana, and what you got out of that.
Oh my gosh, I learned so much. And I remember a mentor told me that when you run a campaign, you learn so much about yourself, and I learned a lot about myself as well as the other people in this political game. And so it was a pretty good experience, I can say. And I'm glad that I did it. I had no big endorsements, no super PACs, no NRA money, no money at all, actually. Very little donations, but I'm grateful for that, because I one of the things that I stand on is getting big money out of politics, getting dark money out of politics, and so the people supported me, and as a result of that, got 250,000 votes. So really excited about.
Yeah, that was big. Congratulations. Georgia politics is a strange beast, but coming, this election cycle, we got, this is a different dynamic. So, it's going to be a different race. I'm a big advocate for the whole, reparations, and we're going to get this right here in Georgia. Can you talk a little bit about like your stance on reparations and what you see as reparations here in Georgia? Because that's one of my top agenda items.
Well, as far as Georgia is concerned, I'm always open to learning more about it, and I have not looked at it from a Georgia point of view, but I have looked at it from a federal point of view and listening to these presidential candidates talk about reparations. I think that is something that should be done. How it's going to get done, I'm very concerned about that, and where the money is going to come from. I am, just like the average person, middle class, working, of course, a veteran, a mother that raised 12 children, 8 boys and 4 girls. And, and just looking at things, in other words, I'm a well-paying taxpayer. And a lot of times I don't mind paying my share of taxes, but I don't want to have to pay more. And so I don't know how that's going to happen, as well as how are we going to, where do we start? Where do we go back to look at who's entitled to the reparations and who's not? Because there are a lot of people of color that were born here, and then there are a lot of people that came over here through slavery. And so I just don't know how that would be. I know it can be done. I know that it can be done and it should be done. I just don't know how they're going to do it.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you, press you anymore, but I'm going to post this. Shamika says, please follow Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell on YouTube. You will be enlightened, Ms. Arnold James. So we got to get you on board with the whole ADOS movement. This country has enough money to fund wars. Georgia has enough money to do a lot of things. So we can definitely make sure some of this money is trickling over to the ADOS community. And it's all about lineage, Triana. It's about those that can trace their lineage directly back to slavery in this country. So people of color is an inclusive term, and I use it as well. But when we're talking about ADOS, it's a specific lineage to those Black people, and Black is another inclusive word, that are can specifically trace their lineage directly to slavery. Like I know that I can trace my lineage back to the quarters. My aunt tells me stories about growing up. She used to tell me stories about growing up in the quarters. So that is where I want you to, I'll stay, because I know that this conversation can get bigger, but ADOS is something that I definitely want you to take a hard look at and take a stand on. Right,
I will. And that's why I said, I'm not going to sit and talk about, something that I haven't been well educated on. And I'm always open to being educated on. And I listen to a lot of people talking about reparations, specifically for Black Americans, Black people. And like I said, I think it should be done. I just don't know how. And I'm open to looking at that and seeing how we can bridge the gap on that, because that's what I am. I always love to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, David, because we're going to, Egberto's in the lobby. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought your questions, impressed me as very thoughtful, careful considerations. I'd really love to hear about how you are running sometime, when we get a chance, in a predominantly white area of Georgia, I would assume. Is that the case, Triana?
Yeah, well, mostly Carroll County, but Douglas County and Paulding County.
Okay. So it's due west of Atlanta. It's that area where Black people have actually been moving into.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're looking at an influx by 2030. We're looking at a large influx of people coming into the district. And, we need to be prepared for that.
Right.
We really do. And I don't think that the current administration and my opponent that have been here ran unopposed since 2013. I don't think that he has prepared for where we are now in the district, as opposed to where we'll be in 10 years. He's just hasn't prepared that.
Yeah.
And, we need to make sure that we make those changes.
Absolutely. Triana, I'm voting for you. I was in your district.
Well,
Thank you.
Even in the district, I did pretty good.
Yeah.
Because under my lieutenant governor race, I have Paulding in Douglas County, and then it was a 50-50 split in Carroll. So
Wow.
Awesome. Well, Triana, we'll have you back. I'm going to give you some homework outside of the broadcast. I'll reach out to you and kind of I will help bring you up to speed, Triana, because we all got to get on the same page when it comes to the needs of the Black community and specifically ADOS. So we will talk, Triana. Thank you for being on the broadcast, and we'll definitely have you back.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. I really, really appreciate what you're saying, Triana.
Thank you so much. And you always go to TrianaForGeorgia.com.
Right.
The number 4Georgia.com and find out more about where I stand on the issues.
Thank you, Triana.
Okay. Talk to you.
Guess who's in the house? Mr. Egberto Willies is in the house. Egberto, welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thank you very much, Tamara, Johnson, Shealey, and David Slavin. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Good to see you again, Egberto.
Well, it's always great to see you guys because you guys always have all these interesting conversations going, and it's always a learning experience and an experience that sometimes put the steam out. So how's it going?
Hey, what's going on that national front? We always look to hear from you, like what's really going on out there.
Let me tell you what's going on in my very humble opinion. We are so concentrated on Trump and impeachment and allowing him to carry the narrative. It is kind of driving me crazy because I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he knows he's going to be impeached. And I think he also knows that it doesn't matter because the Senate is probably going to continue to hold the water for him. And he just keeps extending over and over, like the thing that he's doing in Florida. A lot of people in Florida decided that he decided that he's going to have this big E7 meeting in Florida. And the only reason that he put it out that day was to change the conversation, and the media, as usual, change the conversation. So I would like us to change the conversation and start talking about what we, the people, really need. And irrespective of Donald Trump, we still need to be talking about student loans. We still need to be talking about Medicare for all. We still need to be talking about how do we give good care for our brothers and sisters in Appalachia with the opioid epidemic and believe it or not, or reparations for ADOS folk as well. So I think those are conversations that we need to be bringing to the forefront. And I'm really happy to see that in watching your program today, your concentration was on issues that really matter. And in doing so, we in the independent media are doing what we need to do to ensure that what these guys are talking about ad nauseum is not all that's being talked about.
Well, Egberto, I'm looking kind of a little bit behind the scenes here, and I'm trying to figure out what I have a feeling, that there is an effort underway to prevent him from running for president again.
I think you have hit the nail on the head, and it started with Mitt Romney a few days ago, and specifically yesterday when he came out and made the case I think what he's trying to make the case in an incremental form is that Trump is a clear and present danger for the United States.
Yeah.
And what I don't get, David, and maybe you see something I don't think they want Trump. I mean, they want Pence as the standard bearer. I think they would like a Romney as a standard bearer, but I don't see how we get from Pence to Romney.
No, I agree, and I think that Trump has been roping Pence in, because if Pence is indicted, and Pence does not have the protection that the president does, the vice president doesn't. That means that Nancy Pelosi becomes the president of the United States, and
I had some theories about that. I think that I think I wrote an article about that on Daily Kos. And what I think the idea with Nancy would be is, if it turned out that they impeached them both and both were convicted, remember they both also have to be convicted, I don't think she would take the presidency. I think she would step down from the speakership, because remember, the speakership doesn't have to be either anybody in the House. It doesn't have to be somebody that's been elected. And my gut feeling is, for a matter of good faith, she would offer the Speaker of the House to an unelectable Republican who would finish the term.
Interesting. Well, I agree with you that that is a very possible scenario. I think that what the alt-right calls the deep state,
yes,
which really has some validity to it. I mean, there is a permanent government, that exists, has really begun this a revolt. I mean, we're seeing it. State Department now. There's somebody from the Department of Defense, an assistant secretary, that woman who's going to testify. I think there really is a sense of him being not only a clear and present danger on the diplomatic and international front, but also that allowing him to do the kinds of things that he can do with the presidency, to alter the course of the 2020 election.
Yes.
I think that they don't want to risk it. That is the people who run this country just don't want to risk it. And so they're going to do everything they can to either restrict or restrain what he is able to do in that race, or they're going to find a way to get him out.
David, you're saying something that still started to baffle me, and I'm still trying to figure this out in my head, right? You just mentioned the term. You said the people who run this country. All three of us here know it's a plutocracy that runs the country, and every president is all but a figurehead, right? A figurehead to some extent. They can come in with some power if they have a lot of popularity, but absent popularity, the plutocracy wins, right? And so we know that he has served the plutocracy well. That is one of the reasons that I don't think they are all that eager to get rid of him, unless he goes bat crazy. Now, if he decided to go real crazy, we need to get rid of him. But I think if there were a Bernie elected as a primary rep, or Elizabeth Warren, they wouldn't be too unhappy if Donald Trump did a few shenanigans to win. But I tell you something that was kind of illuminating to me yesterday. Did you see that Nancy Pelosi picture?
Yeah.
Did you see those men surrounding the president? That picture?
Yeah.
I don't know if they understood the cues that came out of that one image.
Yeah.
That one image showed a woman standing. It also showed men that are allowing a bully to rule. And it really left I don't know what these people are thinking, but it left the impression that the one major country that has yet to elect a woman, and it is a woman like that is standing in front of men with their heads bowed to a bully president. Oh man, I think there was so much in that image.
Yeah.
Egberto, before we end your segment here, I have a question. Someone just put up. He said to ask Egberto about his thoughts on Donald Trump's statement he issued, saying that ADOS built the country, and that we're just really beginning to receive recognition for such.
There's an easy answer to that. So let me just say it before I go. Donald Trump is very smart. Donald Trump doesn't have to win all the black people. Donald Trump doesn't have to win all the Latino people. Donald Trump doesn't have to win. He just have to win all the racists, plus give the people a piece of all these other segments. Black men are a problem. And the reason black men are a problem is that black men have been denied the sense of patriarchy that white men have had for such a long time, that Donald Trump has, for a segment of them, starting with the preachers, Donald Trump has given them a sense of machohood and a sense of you did that, and a sense of, guess what has happened under me that all those kind of meek black folk haven't done for you. So he coming in contact with something like a support for ADOS, sort of insulate the low information black men, and that's the one that it works with. Low information black men have a tendency to fall for a Donald Trump that is doing what he's doing with the ADOS movement and making the claim that unemployment has been the best under his administration for black men. So he's playing a game, and he's actually playing a game that is working with a segment of the black population. People can decide and think that, oh, black people won't vote for Donald Trump. I am in the field, and I'm telling you, there are a lot of black men. I have yet to see black women, but there are a lot of black men that are supporting Donald Trump.
And on that, we're gonna thank you, Egberto. You can find him Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope. This man is everywhere. Thank you, Egberto.
Thank you so kindly, guys. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. We got our rolling reporter out there, Miss Robby Caban. She's out there in the field. Let's see where she is this week. Let's see where she is. Robby.
Hey.
Where are you today? Our rolling reporter, Miss Robby Caban. Where are you today?
I'm sorry, my big old finger's in the way. I am here at the Annie Casey site. Let me reverse this for you. This is a 30-acre parcel in front of the community of Pittsburgh, and they have owned this property. This is a nonprofit that's not locally based. They're funded by UPS. Sorry, this is a very, very high-tax area, and there's a lot of construction going on. So let me just show you some of it. Oops. Okay, so as you can see, massive construction, high traffic, and over here you see some of the programs, and directly, and I'm going to walk towards that. This is a new construction, huge facility set for entrepreneurship, and this is right here at the entryway of Southwest Atlanta, which right over here, this is 7585, and if you were to go north, you would hit downtown, and if you were to go south, you would hit the airport. And here is the community of Pittsburgh, and this is new flips that are occurring. And this community has been through 3 housing bubbles. As you can see, it's not high traffic commercial, but some of that has changed. And if I were to walk down this street, you would see a lot of flips. You would see a massive amount of housing flips, just like these. And ironically, right next to the second house, there's a sign up that says, I buy houses. And I have notes here because this is a bit of a convoluted scenario. Of course, folks are watching, wondering what I'm doing. I wonder if they'll stop me from walking on there because I want to give you a better view. The reason this land is so important is because it actually backs up to the Atlanta Beltline. So and that's probably, a lot of people speculate why they've held the property for so long. How you doing? Hi. What are you doing? I was doing a quickie live. I'm sorry. I'll be back though. It's live. So as you can see, this is all being constructed, and this is set for mixed use. Stop me if you have any questions. And you know, the irony too is I just passed a lot of Latinos over here. They're all doing the construction, and it's lost upon me because Pittsburgh is in need of so many jobs. And while I think this is helpful, this new construction here is actually painful because we have so many empty buildings on Metropolitan Parkway. I mean, so many. And we funded this. As City of Atlanta taxpayers, we literally funded this. We also funded, while Casey held this property for 10 years and didn't develop it, the Beltline's going all the way down, and it's going to connect on the southeast, and it connects to the 10 Southwest Atlanta neighborhoods that way. Casey was a nonprofit that was supposed to help Pittsburgh. But the problem is that they engage with neighborhood associations who are elite. And what they did was want to do this new construction for entrepreneurship, which sounds great. But the problem is that Pittsburgh had such divestment that what people really needed were jobs. And this was they had an opportunity to bring jobs here, but they chose not to because they listened to the neighborhood associations. And when I say jobs, I don't mean 100 jobs. I mean developments with 4,000 jobs. I've seen the packages. Those packages never got anywhere in front of the public because of who controls the information. So let me just, do you have any questions while oops, I'm sorry about my finger. Oh, I can't hear you.
I said, keep going. This is great information, Robby.
Okay, so I took notes. I'm sorry. I want to look
No,
at
you're
my
good.
notes. I know I'm in 10 minutes and I want to be quick. So we covered that this is, let me turn this around. Okay, so we covered that this is 30 acres and these are all new trees, which is hilarious because people are crying and up in arms, especially our gentry folks, about the climate, but they don't mind planting new trees when it's a project that they support. And again, this new construction is beautiful. I can't argue with that, but I can argue that we have 100 vacant buildings on Metropolitan Parkway that could have been used, including an old library. And instead they chose to use our taxpayer funds to build new construction here. And I can argue that the presidents of the neighborhood associations of Pittsburgh and Capitol View knew about the 4,000 jobs that were going to go to Pittsburgh that could have turned this site into a food production, into training for film. This was before Tyler Perry, and I will send you the package on this. Training for people who were local. I mean, it was an incredible development, and they never told anyone about it. Exactly, which is why this private groups and these private associations that charge monetary dues are so problematic, because they basically create the narrative that goes to the NPU. And let's be real clear about this. Pittsburgh right here, if you don't have a job, how the hell are you getting credit? If you don't have credit, you can't buy a house. So all these flipped houses, and Annie Casey, this nonprofit, okay, that owns this entire 30-acre parcel and has for 10 years, their own studies said what was needed, and it was jobs, and it was the food desert issue and training. They knew it. And we walked Pittsburgh maybe 5 years ago, and every single resident over there, before it got flipped again, said they would love to be able to have access to jobs and goods and services. But again, that's not who's listened to. And the people that did buy the houses that Annie Casey, this nonprofit, flipped, that was funded by Invest Atlanta, our city's economic development arm, the people that bought those houses will be the recipients of this development. They will be the ones using this business incubator to start the new businesses, etc. But it is not the long-term residents of Pittsburgh who will benefit. And just to add, they are actually being displaced right now, and they're not listened to in the private groups. And the people who operate those private groups, the people who purchase those homes that are elite, that are also elite Black people. There's a good example of someone who runs that neighborhood association. He elevated his own nonprofit into a building that Invest Atlanta funded. And one other issue, that's what tends to happen with these neighborhood association presidents. One person who, at the time the developments were being reviewed, the Capitol View Neighborhood Association president, he didn't tell anybody about the 4,000 job potential on this site for film industry before Tyler Perry. And he now is the consultant. His company is the consultant to Annie Casey for this project. So he has personally benefited from a position of influence. And he actually, ironically, also sits on the Perry committee, the community liaison committee. So I'm just looking at my notes. Will you have any questions? Any questions?
I'm like speechless, Robby. Like I'm floored that this is all happening, and then you look around and this, when you see the needs of the community are not being met. I'm speechless.
Well, it's interesting because I heard some of the broadcasts as I was on the way over here, what I could, and I heard David talk about, when he lived among, and I know that it's different when people are respected, but right here in the community of Capitol View Manor, we've had folks come, and I work with everyone, I mean, anyone who's ethical. We've had folks come as renters, and they were young people unaware, and they were thrown in their own basement, assaulted and robbed. And the reason I bring that up is because I also heard you say they're not who we say we are, or we're not who they say we are. And obviously I have a great respect for the filmmaker and documentary with Ava DuChovny, how they see us. But you have to understand that when you deny people the right to exist, in a reasonable fashion, when you deny the right for people to be a part of a neighborhood association by, knowing that they don't have the monetary dues to pay, when you deny them influence in these private groups, when you deny them access to the means of survival, anyone reacts. All people react. And, it's unacceptable. Basically, our neighborhood, our NPU system, our neighborhood planning system has become a tool for gentrification, and we fund it. And City of Atlanta officials, elected officials, and planning, specifically planning, who has oversight over the NPU, and the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board are complicit by their inaction. They are, because they are fully aware of it. When Tim Keene, the Commissioner of Planning, meets privately with these groups, and when they fund, neighborhood associations fund for-profit tours to come through this community, knowing this community is not able to protect itself, and blocking 4,000 jobs with development and ending a food desert, and funding a nonprofit to flip houses that nobody in that community can buy. And when we go to planning and try to film, and City of Atlanta planners watch us sit there and be told by elected officials, you're not allowed to film, violating sunshine laws in multiple meeting after meeting. And the City of Atlanta department employees say you cannot film, not knowing the sunshine laws. We have a serious problem. They have inundated this area with wholesalers, which are off-market sales, with agent investors, with cash investors. Our inventory is so low right now, and I'm in real estate, and regular people cannot buy, and people are being displaced, and we have another bubble coming that we will not be sustaining because we don't have a regional commerce. And we're all going to pay for that. We're paying for it now. We're paying for it by subsidizing affordable housing. We're paying for it by our homeless crisis. We're paying for it by having to do down payment programs. We're paying for it by the rise in crime because of the inequity. So the consequences of these elites, and they don't have the consequences because they just sell their house they buy low and they sell high and then they leave. And when someone mentions it, that person is blocked or punished with various forms, and often by the use of enforcement, having them arrested, having their reputation slandered, having them shut out of groups, having them blocked, having information denied, having them slandered. That is the MO, and it's a very toxic environment. But I'm talking about it because we have to reform our NPU system. We have to reform our city engagement system. There is no reason on this planet the City of Atlanta should allow, let me turn so you can see it all, should allow the charging of monetary dues at the basic level of civic engagement, which is a modern day poll tax in divested areas, or any for that fact. They should be voluntary so that we do not continue to fund gentrification projects and harm our own residents. The Beltline was funded off of low-income status housing. Low-income status communities. Okay, the fact that the Beltline has now, the consequences of it is a gentrification tool. The people that it was supposed to help are not being helped.
Wow, Robby, that's amazing information, and it's great that you're out there. There's another thing that's going on, which is that giant corporations, real estate corporations, are buying up tens of thousands of single-family homes across the country and renting them out. There's a huge shift in the homeownership market for single-family homes. And many, many, many more people, millions of people, are now living in single-family homes that they are rented from large corporations. And that, I think, is also part of the picture. where that I just read an article about it. There's been a lot of research that's been done that this is a major shift and downward a downturn in the number of people who are homeowners in across the country. So anyway, that's another part of the same picture.
We are at the top of the hour. This broadcast was very informative today. Robby Caban, thank you for all the great information you shared. We look forward to where you're going to be next with your rolling report. Thank you for coming on and shedding light on what's happening in the Metro Atlanta area. So we will see you next week, Robby.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to get some shots of inside Pittsburgh and put them up on the page. Anybody interested in having equitable development and lobbying City Hall for reform can join the NPU forum. I'll put that link up as well. Thank you for the opportunity, as always, Tamara.
Thank you, Robby. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow.
David, wow. It's just, seeing it, hearing it, and seeing it, it's just, we got a lot of work to do. You know what? That's why I'm running. That's why I will never be quiet. That's why I keep connecting with other activists across Georgia, across this nation, because we are going to shed light in these dark places, David. We're not going away. We're not going to stop. You're not going to silence us. Yeah. We are mighty in number, and we're going to keep getting louder and louder, and we're going to keep speaking truth to power, David.
Right. Yep.
Same time next Friday, David, right here. We will be back. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.